Black metal as we know it today originated in Norway in the late 80s and early 90s. It was conceived as an explicitly underground movement, a response to the increasing commercialization the Swedish death metal scene was facing at the time. The movement started from a handful of bands that were all in correspondence with each other. The only way at the time to hear any of their music was through interacting with the bands directly, receiving their demos by tape trading in person or by mail. The average person had no way of knowing that black metal even existed. This all changed in 1993. Varg Vikernes had begun an arson wave targeting Norwegian churches a year before, and he decided to start 93 by doing a public interview for a Bergen newspaper in which he claims credit for all of the church burnings the scene was involved in. The public became aware of the movement for the very first time, with Varg's interview reaching the front page of multiple Scandinavian newspapers, as well as international publications like the British Kerrang. The exposure the genre was receiving doubled later that same year, after Vikernes murdered Euronymous, Mayhem's frontman and the originator of Norwegian black metal. Their faces were plastered across every alternative music publication in the world, and just like that, black metal became mainstream. The actual music was still not something that most people enjoyed listening to, but it was no longer a secret that only the initiated were aware of. You were now able to buy black metal records in normal music stores, and read interviews with black metal bands in magazines. The same commercialization that previously hit the Swedish death metal scene was now taking over Norwegian black metal, the most intense example of this being the likes of Dimmu Borgir. But not everyone was happy about the attention the genre was now receiving from the press. Some believed that the movement should have always stayed underground, as it was initially intended to be. One group that shared these views came from France. They were a black metal collective that valued secrecy above all, allowing only those in their inner circle to even know of the circle's existence. They went beyond simple gatekeeping. They lived together in a castle cut off from society. Its members did not release their music publicly, with their demos only being handed out to trusted individuals. Each member utilized a variety of different pseudonyms, making it impossible to know who created what and even how many people the actual circle contained. They included intentional spelling mistakes in their band and song names in order to cause confusion with those sharing their music without consent. They even created their own language, designed purely to make their aliases, band names, song titles, and lyrics completely incomprehensible to anyone outside of the inner circle. This is the strange story of Les Légions Noires, the most mysterious music collective in history. Les Légions Noires was founded by William Roussel and Vorbd Bator Exed. The exact year the collective started is unknown, but is believed to be 1991. The collective was mostly centered around Brest and Brittany. William Roussel, going by Maynok in his musical work, was born on the 17th of February 1976. He founded the band Mütiilation in 1991, when he was only 15 years old. Despite his young age, Mütiilation would go on to become one of the most influential acts within Les Légions Noires, with Maynok quickly becoming one of the collective's figureheads. Vorbd Bator Exed's real name is still unknown. He is commonly referred to by simply Vorbd, but has used over 20 aliases during his short musical career. Prior to the formation of the collective, he was in charge of guitars and vocals in the band Chapel of Ghouls under the alias of Torgamaton Black Vomit. They released one 6-track demo in 1990 titled Prayers in Nothingness, its musical style falling into first-wave black metal. The band also consisted of the bassist Vortex and the drummer Isa. The same trio released another rehearsal tape in '91 under the band name Zelda. Sometime close to the rehearsal tape's release, Vorbd met the Lord Akon Ketre, and they soon started making music together. They formed a new band named Belkètre, with Vorbd's previous collaborator Vortex returning on bass, this time under the alias of AD. You might have already noticed some similarities between the two bands based on their naming conventions alone. Both Maynok and the members of Belkètre were huge fans of the Norwegian black metal scene. Once it started gaining international popularity, they decided to go the other way. Most of their musical inspiration comes from Norway, and the two bands kept the original scene's Satanism and misanthropy. However, they added an extreme anti-commercialist stance to the mix as a result of Norwegian black metal blowing up. In an interview years later, Maynok compares black metal to punk, in the sense that the original black metal scene did not center around musical talent, but around attitude. Black metal musicians were supposed to adopt a completely different way of life from most people. Normal people weren't even supposed to know that the movement existed, and definitely weren't supposed to understand it. It was supposed to be akin to occult practice, with only the initiated understanding what black metal meant. To suit these goals, the bands of Les Légions Noires allowed no musical or ideological compromises. Their ultimate goal was to retain the sense of mystery and intrigue from the early days of Norwegian black metal, that was lost once its protagonists started doing public interviews and taking photos out of costume. William Russell's approach to keeping that mystique came from his intentional misspellings of his track names. Even the band name he was going under, Mütiilation, is intentionally spelled incorrectly. In his words at the time, he made music in the wrong way for the wrong people in the wrong world, so of course the band name had to be spelled wrong too. The misspellings added to the band's underground status, as it naturally became harder to talk about them. This was further enhanced through tape trading, where bootleggers would hand copy the names of the band's tracks and musicians, often resulting in further misspellings in the process. The band's relatively generic name, combined with the human error present in tape trading, caused their music to be confused for other bands with similar names, letting Mütiilation's existence stay hidden from the uninitiated. Belkètre's solution to the same problem came from inventing their own words that would become the basis for GLOATRE, an entire language Les Légions Noires had invented for their music. The language functioned as code, making the lyrics, track names, aliases, and band names impenetrable for the uninitiated. It's unclear if they ever spoke the language to each other, and it is still unknown what most of the language means. Belkètre is an example of a GLOATRE word, translating to the concept of darkness. All of the aliases used by the band's members are also in GLOATRE, although their meaning is still unclear. It's important to note that the pronunciation of any of the language is a complete mystery to outsiders, as most of Les Légions Noires' correspondences with the outside world were in written form. For the remainder of this video, I will be using the pronunciation that makes the most sense to me for any words in GLOATRE, but this is by no means the official or correct pronunciation for any of the non-English words used in the video. To give you an idea of how unpronounceable some of GLOATRE is, you can see the names of some of the bands that existed in the collective on screen now. If you enjoy these videos and would like to support the channel, you can now do so by becoming a patron. For only $5 a month, you can vote on the topic of the next Schizo Pantheon video and get to see all future videos 1 week before anyone else. The Patreon link is in the description. Thank you to everyone who considers donating. Les Légions Noires started existing in theory around 1991, when the members of Belkètre met Maynach. And for the first period of the collective's existence, they simply made music in secret. They vowed not to release any of their work publicly, only giving homemade tapes to those in their circle and the close contacts of the bands. The circle was fully established by 1994, with the addition of another band that went on to form the core of the collective. The Legion's founders heard a demo tape titled Rehearsal Winter 93 by a local band called Vlad Tepes. It was a duo consisting of Vlad Dragsteam and Vorlok Dragsteam. They are not actually related, but their real names are still unknown to this day. The founders invited Vlad Tepes to join their movement, and the duo happily obliged. With their addition, the core of Les Légions Noires was officially formed, and the collective began operating in full force. The members of the group moved into a castle that belonged to Maynach's family, or, more accurately, a large manor that the group referred to as a castle. This castle served as the group's headquarters for the remainder of the collective's existence. This is also when the collective officially got their name. While I've been referring to them as Les Légions Noires for simplicity's sake, the group was unnamed for the first few years of its existence. In '94, Mütiilation released a 7-inch titled Hail Satanas, We Are the Black Legions, one of the collective's only public releases. The collective took their name from the EP's title, interchangeably referring to themselves as the Black Legions and Les Légions Noires, the latter being the name they are more commonly known under today. The group adopted a logo that very same year, taking the illustration from the cover of Celtic Poetry by Vlad Tepes. This logo can later be seen on most Les Légions Noires releases and public communications, becoming one of their most recognizable symbols. The exact number of people that were part of Les Légions Noires is still unknown, but it is believed that there were 10 to 15 active musicians in their ranks at the collective's peak. The actual number can never be known due to the way the circle operated. All of the musicians involved were strictly anonymous. Even now, 30 years later, William Roussel is the only one to have publicly revealed his real name. Everyone else's identities are still kept a secret. The second issue comes from the naming system used by these musicians. All of the members of Les Légions Noires used a combination of Mütiilation-style misspellings and GLOATRE in their work, with tape trading being the only way to hear any of these bands initially. The nonsensical nature of their names has resulted in multiple different spellings existing for each musician involved. The correct spelling of some of the aliases mentioned is still not known, and a lot of track names have been completely lost to time. These misspellings have also resulted in the deletion of real musicians and the creation of fake ones. Musicians with similar names ended up being merged into the same person over time due to the unreliability of handwritten copies and word of mouth. Similarly, some musicians have had their name misspelled so many times that we ended up with multiple different musicians that likely stem from the same original alias. To make the situation even worse, most of the musicians involved had numerous different aliases that they made music under, typically using a different name when releasing music under different projects, but sometimes using different names for different releases under the same project. There are numerous bands within the scene that actually just consist of the same musicians in different combinations or using different names. The number of bands that released music within Les Légions Noires is estimated to be between 20 and 70. The exact number is, again, impossible to confirm. Because so little is known about any of these musicians, and because of the legendary status the collective now holds, a lot of fake Les Légions Noires releases exist. Bootlegging was the only way to hear any of the collective's music, and most of the bands involved have never come out to say which bootlegs actually come from their movement and which ones are a sham. So naturally, a lot of other musicians had decided to spread their music around while presenting it as real, never-before-heard Les Légions Noires tracks. These types of bootlegs have taken the form of both entirely fake bands and of fake releases for real Les Légions Noires bands. Complicating things further, there are examples of less nefarious fake Legions releases. Due to how error-prone tape trading was, tapes occasionally got completely mislabeled, leading to the work of other bands accidentally being labeled as the work of Les Légions Noires. Both real and fake releases are being sold for crazy prices on auction sites these days, with there being no way for buyers to know if what they are purchasing is real material. Now let's talk about the actual music coming out of the collective. Throughout its existence, the group has only had a handful of public releases. Mütiilation released Hail Satanas, We Are the Black Legions in 1994, and Vampires of Black Imperial Blood in 1995. Vlad Tepes released War Funeral March in 1994 and a split with Belkètre in 1995 titled March to the Black Holocaust. There is also a compilation tape from '96 titled Black Legions Metal that consists of Vlad Tepes covers of other Les Légions Noires songs. Outside of these few official releases, there are countless demos released by the members of the Legions via handmade tapes, distributed to those in the collective and the collective's trusted contacts. The only reason they are publicly available today is because some of these trusted contacts proved themselves not to be as trustworthy as initially expected, bootlegging the tapes and spreading them far outside the movement that spawned them. The authenticity of these tapes varies. Some, like Celtic Poetry by Vlad Tepes or Rights Through the Twilight of Hell by Mütiilation, are now confirmed to have actually come from the bands themselves. But there are a lot of other releases whose genuineness is questionable. The number of confirmed Les Légions Noires songs is also slightly inflated. These demos were not intended to be finalized products, leading to different tapes containing a lot of the same music. In some cases, this is due to a demo being a rehearsal tape, while in others, the bands recorded and spread versions of songs while they were still working on finishing them. Vlad Tepes, for example, have 5 or more versions of some of their songs now out publicly. Because of how tight-knit the collective was, Les Légions Noires had their own sound. All of their releases fall into one of two camps. They are either aggressive, dirty, loosely played black metal with no overdubs, or somber, ritualistic black ambient, mostly without vocals. The former is pretty self-explanatory. The latter is more interesting, being extremely minimalist and arguably not qualifying as music at all. For example, one demo recorded by Vorbd under the name Belkètre was allegedly created by putting a microphone into the anus of either a rat or a Bichon dog. Most of the members of the Legions had one or more similar solo ambient projects. While both these black metal and ambient projects are highly sought after now, they were extremely unpopular at the time. Their releases were given away for free or sold for pennies. The bands were made fun of due to their lack of musical talent, and no one actually wanted to listen to their music. The clearest example of their lack of popularity comes from the original release of War Funeral March by Vlad Tepes. Despite only being released in 1,000 copies, most of those copies ended up in storage due to poor sales, eventually being thrown away. The band received enough recognition in retrospect that War Funeral March ended up being re-released on CD later by Embassy Productions due to high demand. Similar stories follow all of the Les Légions Noires public releases, being released in extremely limited quantities, selling almost none of them, and then much later being sought after enough that they end up being re-released to much success. The group was still known within the black metal scene at the time, just not because of their music. Their extracurricular activities were the thing that got the movement attention. Outside of creating music, the collective spent their time disseminating what they called satanic propaganda. Interviews with the bands were incredibly rare and they kept outside contact to a minimum. Vlad Tepes were the most vocal, speaking to the fanzines Holocaust, Kill Yourself, and Petrified. The band explained in their interviews that they are Satanists, but not in a Christian or LaVeyan way. They are simply anti-Christian society and modernity, wanting to watch it all burn. The other bands refused to give traditional interviews. Their only communication came from Les Légions Noires' one-off fanzine, The Black Plague, as well as manifestos included with the collective's few public releases. In Black Plague, a fanzine designed to spread the collective's propaganda, Maynard states that Scandinavian bands have nothing to do with black metal anymore. He explains that the goal of black metal should be to be hated by common people, an idea that he believes the Scandinavian bands have lost over the years. He wishes for them to die, saying that they deny and destroy their own prior work and legacy. Vlad Tepes expanded upon this idea in an interview with the fanzine Kill Yourself. They stated that they originally admired the Scandinavian black metal scene, praising Mayhem, Satyricon, Emperor, Bathory, and Burzum. However, they later changed their minds after realizing that those bands weren't as committed to the cause as they led people to believe. In their opinion, these bands now had nothing in common with Les Légions Noires. The now infamous Vlad Tepes Belkètre split came with a 4-page manifesto, explaining that the collective has no desire to become popular or earn money. In their words, solitude, sorrow, hate and despair mustn't be sold, so their work is not for sale. They revealed the Les Légions Noires approach to black metal releases, stating that all future work will only be given out to trusted individuals. Following a similar line of reasoning, the Legions explain in their public releases that they are strongly against gigs, believing that live shows don't belong in black metal. In addition to Black Plague and the manifesto, the group frequently released general Les Légions Noires propaganda flyers. These edgy interviews are not what really got the rest of the black metal scene's attention though. Les Légions Noires came to be known for their extensive harassment campaigns, targeting anyone they didn't believe to be true. They sent a lot of death threats and harassment mail in the collective's short existence. The recipients were sometimes Christian bands, but more often than not, their anger was targeted at black metal labels and other black metal bands that went against the Legion's philosophy. Their main target was Osmose Productions, a label that quickly rose in popularity as the black metal scene exploded, becoming one of the first financially successful labels specializing in black metal. Of course, Les Légions Noires saw them as one of the entities leading to the commercialization of their genre. And they weren't wrong per se. The Osmose founder Hervé Herbeau explicitly stated that the label's goal was to spread black metal to a wider audience, not wanting artists to only keep black metal for themselves. This is in direct opposition with everything the collective stood for. The fact that the label was also based in France likely contributed to the Legion's disdain for them. They repeatedly sent them hate mail, including threats to burn their offices to the ground and packages of dead rats and rotten pizzas. A famous example of their hostile relationship with labels comes from the group's interaction with John Thorns, the creator of the Petrified fanzine and the label Full Moon Productions. Les Légions Noires sent John a 5-track cassette by Vlad Tepes titled War Funeral March, with the goal of having Full Moon Productions behind one of their few public releases. Their only stipulation was for their music not to be reviewed and Petrified. John agreed, releasing the tape through Full Moon. However, he supposedly forgot about their special request by the time the actual tape came out, not only reviewing the music in his fanzine, but even placing the band's contact addresses next to the printed Vlad Tepes interview. This led to Les Légions Noires sending John several death threats. He responded by sending some back, officially ending the collective's relationship with Full Moon Productions. Similar behavior was directed at any bands that the collective did not consider true Satanists or real black metal. According to Vlad Tepes, all Finnish bands fell into one of these two categories. But the two bands that faced the majority of the group's anger were Impaled Nazarene and Sigillum Diaboli. While it seems that they believed that the French scene was superior to other countries, the Legions were far from nationalist. At one point, they even intended to expand to bands outside of France, but their deranged behavior towards others in the same subgenre shut these attempts down. The Norwegian Mortis was interviewed for the only existing issue of their Black Plague fanzine, but the Circle's relationship with him didn't progress much beyond that. The Belgium-based Enthroned were contacted by Les Légions Noires directly, being asked to formally become a part of their ranks. Enthroned declined the offer, later stating that they actually liked the music coming out of the collective, but the group's insane stunts put them off from joining. The failure of these two attempts may have demoralized the collective, as they made no known attempts to induct outsiders following that, going back to existing in isolation. But with a movement that faced so much outward conflict, there was bound to be some infighting, leading to the Circle's eventual downfall. Les Légions Noires began to implode around 1996, primarily due to the fact that their secret demos began leaking out to the public. The fact that we now know about the group's music was the reason for their collapse. The tapes that were intended to only be shared with trusted individuals started to be pirated and distributed without the collective's permission. This increased the level of paranoia within the group, as no one knew who was responsible for the leaks. It's important to note that tensions within the legions were already high at that point. According to Maynok, everyone in the group seemed to be in constant competition with one another over who could dominate the rest of the group. Despite their founding principle being secrecy, all of the core members wanted to be known as the leader of Les Légions Noires, something that became increasingly difficult to balance with their intentionally mysterious approach to outsider contact. The final blow came from Maynok deciding to leave the group at the height of their infighting. There are different rumors for what caused them to decide to abandon the project. Some have stated that he was ejected from the group due to his drug use. Others have said that he left on his own accord after taking offense at another member's comment about child abuse. The man himself has never confirmed what caused them to part ways with the collective. Either way, Maynok's departure meant that Les Légions Noires lost access to the castle that served as their headquarters for the past few years. The other members had no accommodation and no income after being kicked out. They spent some time living in the woods, seeing it as a good way to distance themselves from society. They tried to continue running the collective, but without Maynok's guidance and financial support, the legions quickly fell into ruin, officially no longer existing by 1997. The bootlegging only intensified after the circle stopped making music, as the remainder of the circle's trusted contacts didn't see a reason to keep their music hidden now that the projects the demos came from no longer existed. This also gave birth to Les Légions Noires forgeries, an issue I already touched upon previously. Each of the three bands that defined the short-lived movement have taken different paths after the collective disappeared. There were initial rumors that Vorbd and Belkètre, the duo behind Belkètre, committed suicide together after the fall of Les Légions Noires. It's still unclear what happened with Lord Akon, as he hasn't released any new music since his time with the Legions. At the very least, he hasn't released new music tied to his old alias in any way. As far as Vorbd goes, however, he is definitely still alive. A long period of silence followed after Belkètre's disbanding, but he returned to the black metal scene in 2008 in order to discredit fake releases attributed to his old projects. He started his own label in 2014, Calais Darkness, under the alias Vorbd na Rieder. The label's goal was to combat the intense bootlegging his band faced since its collapse, giving official releases to a lot of his old material that was initially only given to friends. The label is still active today, having reissued an insane amount of music composed during the few years that Les Légions Noires were active. Vlad Tepes split up in 1997 during the collective's collapse. Its two members have not spoken to each other since. Vorlog Drax's team has not released any new music since the circle's collapse, at least not music that can be tied to his old alias. Vlad Drax's team has been more active. He came back in 2014 with new material, released under the alias of Varvlor 1476. He has been periodically releasing new music under this project since. Following in Vorbd's footsteps, Vlad started releasing never-before-heard music from his old Legions projects. He's also played in other black metal bands since his return to the black metal scene. Mütiilation has been by far the most active Legions band in the years since the collective's end. While it originally utilized a lot of the other musicians from the collective, Maynard decided to continue releasing music under the Mütiilation name as a solo project after the Legion's collapse. He was also the first to start the trend of publicly releasing secret Les Légions Noires tapes, putting out a compilation tape in 1999 containing his old Mütiilation recordings. The tape was not without controversy. It was titled Remains of a Ruined Dead Cursed Soul, and was accompanied by text saying that Maynard is now dead because of his disgust with the black metal scene. This obviously prompted rumors about the musician's death, rumors that would be proven false with the release of his 2001 album Black Millennium Grimly Reborn, featuring Maynard in corpse paint and a wheelchair on the cover. Mütiilation has released numerous albums since, with Maynard also releasing solo works outside of Mütiilation as well as playing in other bands. He is by far the most open to interviews out of anyone from his old clique, something that can easily be seen by the fact that he is the only person from the collective whose real name and date of birth are now publicly known. He stated that he hasn't had any contact with the Legion's members since he decided to depart the project, having no idea what most of them are doing these days. However, his interviews have been instrumental to the making of this video, shedding light on the aspects of Les Légions Noires that were previously shrouded in mystery and debunking rumors about the collective. Les Légions Noires have had a unique impact on the black metal scene. Their name lives on in the genre's history, yet this afterlife has little to do with the actual music the group created. Their legacy is that of a spectacle, a collective more focused on the way they are perceived by the rest of the subculture than on their creative output. The reason they are remembered today has everything to do with the way the musicians presented themselves, the personas they put out into the world, and the stunts they repeatedly engaged in to prove that they are committed to the black metal cause. Their tapes aren't resold for insane prices because of their musicianship, but because of everything surrounding it. Their fans never speak about the nuances of their records, but about the lengths they've gone to gatekeep their releases and the harassment campaigns they engaged in. Their existence is still felt in black metal today, not as musical influences, but as templates for how a band should present themselves in order to be seen as true by their peers.